The Radio Planet by Ralph Milne Farley. Chapter 12, Companions in Misery. In the morning, Miles Cabot was to be brought before the Terrible, King of the Roys, for execution in the diabolical manner common to these furry aborigines, namely by being strung up by the heels and then used as a target for the archery of the king. In spite of this, he slept soundly and dreamed of radio sets and blast furnaces and galena mines until he was awakened by a soft furry paw shaking his shoulder. A voice spoke close in his ear. "A life for a life." "So you have that proverb on this continent as well as in Cupia," was his reply. "Who are you, and what do you want?" "I am the soldier whom you saved from the raging mountain torrent, and what I want is to repay the favor. Is it really true that you are a friend of Otto the Bold?" "Yes." "Then come, the forces of Grod the Silent, Prince Otto's father, are encamped but a short distance from here, and I am on guard over you for the moment. Come while there's yet time." Cabot arose in haste. The other promptly severed the cords which bound his elbows. Oh, how good it felt to have his arms free once more! He held them aloft and flexed and reflexed the lame and bloodless muscles. Excruciating pain shot through the nerves of his forearm, but it was a pleasant pain, easy to bear, for it portended peace and rest to the tired members. He wiggled all his fingers rapidly, and the pain gave way to a prickly tingling, which in turn gradually faded off as the blood coursed freely through his veins and arteries once more. He drew a deep sigh of relief. "Come," the guard commanded. Together the two left out the tent and threaded their way among the other tents, out of the camp and down the rocky hillside path, the Roy in advance with Miles following, holding the other's hand for guidance. Miles lost all sense of direction in the jet-black, starless night, but the other, born and reared on Poros, was hence used to the daily recurrences of 12 hours of absolute darkness, walked sure-footedly ahead, and seemed to know where he was going. Finally, after about 2 hours of this groping treadmill progress, lights appeared ahead, and presently there came a sentry's challenge. "Halt! Who is there?" "Two messengers with word for Grod the Silent," Cabot's conductor replied. In an aside, Cabot interestedly inquired, "How does it happen that this camp is guarded, whereas the camp which besieged the village of Sur was not? There's no need to post sentinels when fighting against Kings, for Kings never go out in the dark, but we Roys are different." "Why, then, did we meet no sentinels when leaving your camp?" "Because we were going out. We passed one, but he did not challenge us. Coming back would be different." At this point the hostile guard interposed. "Stop that whispering amongst yourselves. Ho, there's a light." Whereupon a small detachment arrived, double-quick, with torches. The leader shaded his eyes with one palm and inspected Miles and his companion carefully. "This is a King," he said in surprise, noting the leather trappings of the Earthman. "You are spies. Seize them." In an instant they were seized and bound and thrown into separate tents under guard. When morning came, Miles was fed and then led before Grod the Silent. The Earthman smiled ingratitude when he entered, but there was no sign of recognition on the stern face of the King of the Roys. "Who are you?" the latter asked, "and what are you doing here?" "I am Cabot the Minorian," was the reply, "a recently escaped prisoner of the Terrible." "Do not mention that accursed name in my presence," thundered the king. "Then, I do not seem to recall your name, but your face looks familiar. Where have I seen you before?" "In a ravine near Sur." Grod's brow clouded. "I remember, you felled me with your fist," he said darkly. Then, brightening a bit, "But you spared me. Why?" "Because your death would please the Roy whose name you do not permit me to mention." "You improve," Grod declared, smiling. "Knowing then that we Roys hold to the maxim, a life for a life. Accordingly, I shall set you free and shall content myself with shooting arrows merely into the soldier who brought you here." "You give me a life for life, unconditionally?" asked Miles. "Yes." "Then give me the life of the poor soldier who saved me from the unmentionable one. Shoot your arrows into my body instead." "Very magnanimous of you," Grod said, "and really it makes but little difference to me just whom I practice archery upon. Oh, guard, bring the other prisoner in." One of the soldiery accordingly withdrew, and presently returned with Quiven of all persons. Cabot gasped, and so did the golden-furred King maiden. Then both uttered simultaneously the single word, "You!" The savage chief smiled. Said he, "A slight mistake, guard. I meant you to bring the Roy soldier who was captured with the furless one earlier this morning, but evidently it's turned out to be a fortunate mistake, for it's brought to my attention the fact that this common King man and this noble King lady are acquainted." While the Roy was speaking, an idea occurred to Cabot. He was entitled by code of honor of this savage race to save a life. Chivalry demanded that he save the life of this maiden rather than that of himself or even the soldier who had rescued him from at the Terrible. Yet what would Lilla think? Did he not owe it to Lilla to save his own life in order that he might some day return across the boiling seas to save her from the unknown peril which menaced her? For him to sacrifice himself and her, or even merely himself for the sake of some strange woman, would surely fill Lilla with consuming jealousy. Luckily, Lilla was not here to see him make his choice. He was an officer and a gentleman, to whom but one course lay open, and if he decided in that way that would displease Lilla, well, then that very decision would forever prevent Lilla from knowing. So, his mind made up, he spoke. "O King, you still owe me a life, inasmuch as your guard has made the mistake of submitting this young lady for the Roy warrior, whose life I had elected to save. I now accept the substitution, and elect that you will spare her life in place of mine." Quiven the Golden Flame stared at him with tears of gratitude and appreciation in her azure eyes. Grod the Silent smiled knowingly in a manner which infuriated Miles, but fortunately Quiven did not notice this, so Miles let it pass. Then the Roy King spoke. "We shall see about that later. Meanwhile, guard, bring in the right prisoner." The guard sheepishly withdrew, and soon returned with a soldier who had befriended Miles. "Why did you rescue this furless King, who is prisoner of your forces?" Grod asked the newcomer. "Because he rescued me from the mountain torrent, O King," was the reply. "A life for a life." "Quite true," Grod admitted, nodding his head contemplatively. "But was it altogether necessary to that end that you leave your own forces?" "No, O King," the soldier replied, "but I fain would battle on your side. I've had quite enough of the fat one who commands our outfit." "Good!" cried Grod, clapping his hands. "We shall need every man we can muster. Thus have you bought your own life and freedom. Unbind him, guards, and give him weapons so he may fight for us. As for you, you yellow minx, the quicker you get out of here, the better it will suit me. We are at war, and women have no place in our warfare. Therefore I gladly give you your life, which the furless one has purchased. Do not think," he continued, "that I do not know who you are, or that I do not realize that I could hold you for a very high ransom. But for the present it suits my purposes to release you, for in my mind it is a one-cart road, and at present I am engaged in an important and highly personal war. Besides, if I were to keep you, my enemy might get hold of you and collect the ransom himself, which would never do. 12 days from now, if I should be in need of carts, a messenger from me will call at the palace of Theof the Grim, and if you are at all grateful, you'll make a present of about 20 sturdy wagons. As for you," turning to Miles, "your life is mine, since you failed to redeem it. Some day I may call upon you for it, but at the present I wish to use it. You are detailed as my personal representative to escort this lady safely to Verkingi. Now both of you get out of here, for I have important things to do. I must put my army on the march." One of the guards stepped up to Miles and cut his bonds. Quiven had not been bound. "May I have arms, O King, so that I can fulfill your mission with credit to you?" Miles asked with a twinkle in his gray eyes. "You keep on improving," Grod replied. "Yes, you may. Here, take my own sword. You are a brave man and able warrior, as my chin well remembers. May the builder grant that some day we fight side by side." This gave Cabot an idea. "Why can that not be now?" he suggested. "Why not form an alliance with the Verkingi against the unmentionable one?" But Grod the Silent shook his head. "No," he said positively, "it cannot be done. In the first place, the unmentionable one himself is seeking to make such an alliance against me, and in the second place, this is my own private fight. I have spoken." Then Cabot had a further idea. "About the wagons," he said, "would you mind sending them sending for them at the brickyard north of Verkini. That would be much more convenient. Very well, Grodd replied. Roy warriors then supplied the two prisoners with portable rations and escorted them for quite a distance from the camp until they struck a mountain trail. This, the escort informed them, led to Verkini. There the Roys left Miles and Quiven alone. The first thing that she asked was, "With all these mountains full of warring Roys, do you believe that we shall be safe?" "I think so," Miles replied. "The very fact that they are at war will keep them much too busy to bother about us. Come on." As they hurried down the trail, each related his or her adventures to the other. Kabats have already been set down. As for Quiven, she had gone with a few soldiers to hunt for Miles after his prospecting party had never returned, and had returned and reported his disappearance by the river. But her party had been killed and she had been taken prisoner. "Did Grodd treat you with respect?" Miles asked, with clenched fists. "Absolutely," she replied, tossing her pretty head. "I never knew a man so impersonal. I am accustomed to have men recognize my presence and pay some attention to my existence. But this brute, why, I might as well have just been a piece of furniture or one of his servants. I don't believe he knows what color my eyes are, or whether I'm pretty or not. And you're just as bad as he is," she added somewhat irreverently. "Your eyes are blue, and you're very pretty," Cabot replied. "In fact, you closely resemble my own wife, the beautiful Princess Lilla, who waits for me far across the boiling seas." "Which reminds me to ask," Quiven said abruptly, "how successful was your expedition, apart from being captured and getting yourself into all kinds of needless trouble?" So he told her about the glistening metallic particles in the sands of the river, and also how he had found what would probably sink Blend and Galena. Then they discussed in details his plans for his various factories. From time to time they munched some sort of food which had been given to them. The day quickly sped and evening drew near, yet they still were upon the mountain road with no sight of Verkini or any landmark familiar to either of them. Quiven was for stopping and resting, but Miles urged her on. "No matter how tired you are," he said, "it's not safe to stop in strange country." So still she struggled on. The sky darkened without the usual pinkening of the west. All too well they knew what that portended. One of the heaven-splitting tropical storms so common on Poros. And they were right. The storm broke, the thunder roared in one continuous volume of sound. The lightning and the rain alike poured down in continuous sheets. The trail became a mountain torrent, so that they had to cease their journey and crawl upon a huge boulder in order to be able to avoid being engulfed by the water. The rain stopped as abruptly as it had begun. Again the silver sky appeared overhead. The exemplar brook rapidly disappeared, but left in its wake a wet, muddy, and slippery trail, down which the two took up their journey once more. Several times Quiven stumbled and fell, until at last her companion had to help her in order to keep her going at all. But in spite of this assistance she finally broke down and cried. "I will not go one step further," she asserted. Miles seated himself beside her and talked to her as one would soothe a child, and that was what she was, a tired little child. "You can't stay here," he urged. "The ground is damp, the night's coming on, and your fur is sopping wet." "I don't care anything about anything," she sobbed. "All I know is I am positively sure I cannot go on." So he decided that it would be necessary to change his tactics. "I'm ashamed of you," he replied. "You, the daughter of a king, and can't stand a little exercise? Why, I believe you're just plain lazy." For reply she jumped on her feet in a sudden rage. "Oh, you're a beast!" she cried. "You insulting beast! You common soldier, you! I'll show you I can stand as much hardship as any pampered woman. Folk of your cupia, though the men of my country, even our common soldiers, would be gentlemanly enough not to force a lady to endure more than is absolutely necessary. Oh, I hate you, I hate you, I hate you!" "You are not being forced to endure more than is necessary," her escort harshly replied. "In the first place, it is necessary to go on, and in the second place, I am not forcing you. You can go on or not, just as you see fit, but as for me, I don't intend to spend the night here in a wet valley. Goodbye." For reply, Quiven raced ahead of him with, "Oh, how I hate you!" and disappeared around a turn in the trail.